Hi everyone, hope you're all doing well. So back with another video. This one I'm just going to be running through about 15 different movies. Hopefully some of these will be unfamiliar to you, but let me know in the comments which ones you know, which ones you don't, and if any are of interest to you. So in 1970, director Joseph Sargent, who's perhaps best known for directing the taking of Pelham 123 in the 70s, but yeah, he started the 70s with this one, Colossus, the Forbin project. Really fascinating science fiction drama this. So here we have the US has invented a supercomputer which is intended to control the nuclear defense system. The scientist inventor, Dr. Charles Forbin, he gets it up and running, but very quickly the supercomputer finds that there's a Russian supercomputer as well, and the two computers start talking to each other, and then we get into this huge battle of wits about who's actually going to take control and what it's going to mean for humankind. Really interesting one, this. I mean, yes, it might seem a little bit dated, but really fascinating stuff that's going on in this one. Excellent cast, not a well-known cast. We've got Eric Braeden as Dr. Charles Forbin and Susan Clark as his assistant. But this was scripted by James Bridges, who adapted the screenplay. James Bridges did another really tense film in the 70s, which was The China Syndrome, which he wrote and directed. But yeah, the Colossus, the Forbin project, really fascinating stuff. Definitely, if movies such as Failsafe or War Games are of interest to you, then seek this one out. The Great White Silence from 1922 is an absolute privilege to watch. So this is a film of Captain Scott's expedition to the Antarctic to reach the South Pole. And what we're actually seeing in this film is actual film recording that was done by Hubert Ponting during this period, 1910 to 1913. And it looks absolutely fantastic. Now, this film was originally released, like I say, in about sort of 1922. And it didn't actually do very well, but yeah, the BFI were able to sort of unearth the footage and get it re-released in 2011, I think it was. And wow, it's just absolutely extraordinary. They've put a beautiful chill-out type score onto this that's done by Simon Fisher-Turner, who's done a lot of work for Derek Jarman in the past. Yeah, definitely this is a film where you want to turn all the lights out and just sort of watch the film and absorb this wonderful chill-out music that plays. But incredible footage of this perilous journey across the sea and across the ice, and very emotional ending to it. I mean, obviously people will probably know the story, but yeah, the film itself is very impactful. Now, a little bit like Robert Flaherty's Nanook of the North, it does recreate some scenes, but it's all done seamlessly within the film itself, so you may not sort of really pick up on that. But yeah, extraordinary footage. An example being just even before they actually reach the ice, you get to see the ship going through the sea and going through, cutting through ice with the bow of the ship, and you're watching this sort of camera angle going down to the bow of the ship and seeing the bow cut through the ice. And as you're watching that, you're thinking, well, that's great, but how did the cameraman actually get this? Because, you know, back then it was huge box cameras, and they immediately answer the question by actually showing some footage of Hubert Ponting sort of stretched out on a gangplank that they'd put out on the starboard side of the bow, and he's just lying there out on this gangplank with this huge camera pointing back at the bow. So absolutely extraordinary stuff that they were able to film. So yeah, great footage of, you know, penguins and seals and killer whales, and then obviously the really perilous adventure that Captain Scott and his crew then had, which had a really disastrous ending. So yeah, really powerful stuff, definitely worth seeing. The Royal Hotel from 2023 is an Australian set drama that involves a couple of girls who are out on a vacation. They need to earn money. They end up at a remote hotel and start working in the bar there and start experiencing all the very sort of toxic male behaviour from the locals. This becomes a very unsettling film. Now, the film is directed by Kitty Green, and it reunites her with actress Julia Garner. Both of them had been involved with The Assistant from a couple of years ago, a sort of Me Too drama that came out. Now, anyone that's seen that film will know just how kind of understated it was, and how sort of it kept up a sense of threatening unease. And in a similar vein, although The Royal Hotel is a very different film, again, Kitty Green just keeps this sense of unease going throughout the whole film. Now, some people might not actually like how it actually resolves itself, because perhaps there really isn't a satisfactory conclusion to this one. But yeah, again, this constant sense of dread and unease is what really impresses about this film. And Julia Garner, once again, is very good. The Bitter Tears of Petra von Kant is a film from 1972, and it's directed by Rainer Werner Fassbinder. He was a really prolific director who died only at the age of 37, and yet had done some 40 movies, TV shows, theatre, screenplays, etc. So yeah, a huge amount during his brief life. Now, this film involves a fashion designer who's in a very sadomasochistic relationship with her assistant, and then brings into her life a young model who she tries to then form a love affair with. So yeah, there's a lot of power play dynamics that's going on in this film. Now, this is a film that absolutely splits me down the middle, because when it comes to the actual characters, I find them all quite repellent and unlikable, and I didn't really enjoy spending my time with them in this film, or indeed hearing too much of what it is they had to say, particularly the main fashion designer, who's played by Margit Carstensen. But what was exceptional about this film is just how it was filmed. This is all filmed in one location within this apartment, and it's really beautifully staged. The cinematography in this is done by Michael Ballhaus, who went on to do lots of films with Martin Scorsese, starting with After Hours. And what he achieves here in terms of his cinematography is quite extraordinary, because, like I say, we've really just got this one set, and although the set itself is dressed quite nicely, we've got this Poussin paintings, beds, furs, etc., and the women in their various costumes. Michael Ballhaus still has to find lots of interesting angles to shoot them from, and that's what makes this film really, really exceptional for me. But yeah, I could have done with this movie actually being a silent movie almost, because I think so much of what happens in this film is told through the body language, and that's what really makes it interesting. So yeah, like I say, it really does split me down the middle here. They're definitely, in terms of the actual characters themselves, it's an unlikable film, but there's a lot going on here in terms of power dynamics, and yeah, so it's a really interesting film in that respect, but definitely from a cinematography point of view and staging, framing, exceptional. The Take from 1974 is a sort of police corruption thriller that's set in New Mexico, and it stars Billy D. Williams along with Eddie Albert and even Frankie Avalon. I must admit, it's not a particularly good one. It does have a few action moments, particularly a good court scene, a shootout at the beginning of the film and a car chase later on, but the rest of the drama is a bit plodding. However, the interesting thing about The Take is that it's actually adapted from a British novel written by G.F. Newman called Sir You Bastard. So this was written around the time when a lot of police corruption was being sort of discovered in the Met in the UK, and so he wrote about that. G.F. Newman actually went on to write the British version of Law and Order, and also the scripts for Judge John Deed later on in life as well. So yeah, interesting connections there. The Take is directed by Robert Hartford Davis, who has another film which is released by Indicator, which is Corruption. But yeah, The Take, you know, it's good to see Billy D. Williams, but yeah, it's not a great movie. Fragment of Fear from 1970. Yeah, this is a difficult one to give high praise to. It's quite a mess, really. This is a release that's put out by Indicator. Now, from the images and the title here, you might think this is a giallo or a horror movie, and it's neither of those, really. It is a sort of murder mystery to an extent, but involves David Hemming's character, who has some drug issues, and so this really boils down to what is imagined and what is real. But yeah, it stars David Hemmings, Gail Honeycutt. Lower down the cast we have Adolfo Celli, Wilfrid Hyde-White. So yeah, interesting people that are involved, and it's filmed very nicely, but it is a bit of an incomprehensible mess and plods along a bit. Now, Paul Dean, who's the scriptwriter on this, he'd been involved in a lot of the Planet of the Apes follow-up movies, as well as some of the James Bond movies that starred Sean Connery, so certainly an experienced scriptwriter. But if you listen to the assistant director who talks in the extras on this disc, he describes how the film was quite a muddled shoot because the director, Richard Sarafian, who also directed Vanishing Point, he was sort of quite drunk a lot of the time on the set and ripped up the script and didn't really have a sense of continuity. And likewise, David Hemmings, the actor, hadn't really read the script properly when he signed on to it, and so didn't really know what he was going to be doing. So yeah, it's definitely a mess, not without interest, but yeah, not a great movie. Cisco Pike from 1971. Now, this is a great movie. Quite leisurely paced, but definitely worthwhile. This has got Chris Christopherson in his feature film debut. He was already a successful musician, and we get a number of his songs featuring in the film as well. This also co-stars Gene Hackman just before he hit the big time with The French Connection, so a smaller role in this. But yeah, he's playing a crooked cop who wants Chris Christopherson's help in selling a whole bunch of illegal weed so that he can get $10,000. This co-stars Karen Black, as well as the great Harry Dean Stanton, and also Joy Bang, who went on to be in the film Messiah of Evil, which is also put out by Indicator. But yeah, really enjoyed this one. Great locations in LA for much of the filming of this, and yeah, it just has a really good kind of pace and feel to it. Enjoyed this one immensely. The Endurance, Shackleton's legendary Antarctic expedition. Now, this is a documentary that was released in 2000, but it actually utilises a lot of the original film footage that was recorded by Frank Hurley in 1914 to 1916, when Ernest Shackleton did this incredible expedition to the Antarctic, following on from Captain Scott earlier, and their ship became encased in ice in the Weddell Sea, and then they had to survive on the ice and then make this perilous journey across ice, and then use a small boat to go hundreds of miles to a small island, and then try and get rescue by then climbing over uncharted territory to reach a village and then get rescue attempts. Extraordinary stuff. There's some excellent footage in this. Now, there is a film that was actually released in 1919 called South, which uses Frank Hurley's footage. So yeah, I should check that one out as well. I know it was being released by the BFI, but yeah, this is a really good one. It uses, like I say, a lot of the original footage, but then it also uses modern day footage as well, just to sort of show the sea conditions and the ice conditions, things of that nature. It's narrated by Liam Neeson, and this is directed by George Butler, who's a documentary maker, and we have him to thank for letting us know in 1977 that when Arnie was at the gym, it was like coming all the time, because yeah, he directed Pumping Iron. So yeah, The Endurance, definitely worth seeing. Now, when it comes to movies about surveillance, there's possibly two that might spring to mind, and those being The Conversation with Gene Hackman and The Lives of Others. But in 1970, really interesting film, a Czech film called Ucho, which is the ear, and this came out and it was directed by Carol Kachina. Really fascinating one, this, and it really centers on two people. We have a government ministry official who's at a party event and comes to the realization that, you know, there's a few things going on, a few people being let go. He returns home with his wife. They've both had a few drinks. They're both a bit argumentative. They argue at home into the night, but come under the realization that there's listening devices positioned throughout their house. So yeah, this becomes quite an intense drama. Some of it has been compared to Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf because of the kind of drunken arguing that goes on. And yeah, whilst I can see that, that's not really a fair comparison. This film should be just seen on its own merits. But yeah, really, really interesting. I enjoyed this one quite a lot. Born to Win from 1971. Now, kind of ignore the poster for a moment because Robert De Niro certainly isn't the main star in this. The main star is George Segal, and a really, really good performance from him. He plays a sort of drug user, drug dealer, and we see him on the streets of Manhattan getting involved in various escapades, getting involved with the mob, the police. This co-stars Karen Black, Robert De Niro as a police officer, along with Hector Elizondo is in this as well. And this is directed by Ivan Passer, who was a Czech writer-director who worked a lot with Milos Forman on Czech New Wave films. But this was his first film that he made in the US. And yeah, it has a very sort of loose structure to it. So might not be for everyone's taste, I suppose. But yeah, like I say, for the performances by George Segal, it's really sort of interesting. Yeah, definitely worth seeing. Not the greatest movie, but certainly a good one. And Ivan Passer, when it comes to his American movies, then definitely seek out Cutter's Way. I think that is his best American-based movie, which starred Jeff Bridges and John Hurd. Now, sticking with Ivan Passer just for a moment, and let's go back to Czechoslovakia, and the last film that he made there before he went to the States was in 1965, and it was called Intimate Lighting, and I really like this film. It's black and white, a very laid-back kind of comedy drama, and it concerns music and really different sort of class differences, because we have one musician with his girlfriend who comes from the city. He's in an orchestra, and he comes to visit an old friend out in the country, and this musician just really plays music at funerals and school events. So they get together, they talk about their lives, they play music. The girlfriend has to sort of while away her time trying to find things to do on this rural farm. So yeah, this is very, very loose structured, but I really like that about it. And like I say, you get to see these kind of class differences going on, behavioural differences, habitual differences, and it's just quite sort of amusing at times and entertaining. So yeah, I enjoyed Intimate Lighting, definitely worth seeing. Now, when it comes to Australian cinema, there's one movie which is quite significant, really, that came out in 1978, and it's got a whole load of well-established Australian actors in it, and it is Newsfront. And this really was a homage, if you like, to newsreel cameramen, so the people post-war Australia who would make all the newsreel films that would be featured at cinemas before the main feature, and really before the advent of television. So yeah, this is a really, really interesting one that goes through a lot of Australian history as it reenacts capturing some of the significant events there. So you've got this sort of integration between actual newsreel footage and recreation of events, and it's all quite fascinating stuff. Now, it might lack a bit of an emotional heart because it really is just going from one event to another, and so for that reason we're never getting fully invested in the characters in this. So I suppose it does plod a little bit in that respect, but yeah, for what it's doing in terms of recreating all these events and how it's filmed, yeah, really, really impressive film. Bill Hunter is the significant Australian actor who really leads this one. Lower down the cast, we've got the likes of Brian Brown, but yeah, we've also got Wendy Hughes in this, really gorgeous actress from the 70s and 80s. And she's fantastic in this. So yeah, Newsfront, really interesting one, directed by Philip Noyce, so an Australian director who's perhaps best known again for moving to the States and doing a whole load of movies there, such as Dead Calm and Patriot Games. Dominique from 1979 is a sort of murderous, ghostly drama that's directed by Michael Anderson, the director who also did Logan's Run, as well as Doc Savage, the Man of Bronze. But yeah, this is one that concerns a money-hungry husband who pushes his wife to commit suicide, but then it seems she comes back as a ghost to haunt him and take revenge. This has an amazing cast. We've got Cliff Robertson, Gene Simmons, Flora Robson, Jenny Agutter, Simon Ward, Ron Moody and Jack Warner in this. So yeah, really impressive cast. But it is a whole load of illogical kind of nonsense, really, if you think about it too much. This is the kind of film that really, if you enjoy things like the Hammer mystery and suspense series, then I think you'll enjoy this, because you just have to sort of hold your disbelief on this and go with it. And I like it because it's not actually a movie that sort of tries to get any sort of jump scares or anything like that. It's all quite slowly paced, and there's nothing here to really sort of, be gory or jump out at you or anything like that. But yeah, it's old-fashioned stuff. Really, I think if this film came out in the 40s or 50s, then people would love it a lot more. But perhaps late 70s, people weren't really prepared to accept this kind of nonsense any longer. But yeah, no, it's well shot. It's got some nice colour in it. But yeah, really good cast and just kind of enjoyable, really. So yeah, Dominique. Now, from 1972, we have a made-for-TV Spanish movie that's become a bit of a cult classic. It's only 35 minutes long. Now, if you don't know this movie, it's called La Cabina, or The Telephone Box. If you haven't seen it, don't look it up, and you don't want to know too much about this one before you see it, because it has surprises for you. But yeah, this is a really interesting one. I'll just give you the bare bones to start you off with. But yeah, basically this concerns a small town in Spain where a van arrives and it delivers a telephone box to a market square. Just puts it in the middle of the square there. A man comes along with his son, shows his son off onto the school bus, and then decides he's going to make a call from this telephone box. But he gets inside and then can't get out. And then we have a drama and comedy and other things that happen from there. Like I say, you really don't want to know too much about this. Just watch this, because it takes you in a very interesting direction. So yeah, La Cabina, or The Telephone Box, look out for it. You can find it on YouTube. Not a great print, but yeah, well enough to see it. And finally, The Quiet Girl from 2022. Wow, I absolutely love this film. This is an Irish film, filmed in the Irish language, and it was the first Irish film to be nominated for the Best International Feature Oscar. But this is absolutely glorious and heartbreaking. You'll definitely cry at the end. I absolutely love this film. Beautiful performances. Cinematography by Kate McCulloch, who had done great work on the TV series Normal People. But yeah, this concerns a young, quiet, neglected Irish girl who is sent off from her dysfunctional family to go and stay with relatives for the summer. And they then have to sort of deal with this young girl whilst working on their farm. And they have past events of their own to deal with. Just a beautiful film. I absolutely loved every second of this. Really delicately done. It's not a complicated story at all by any means, but yeah, it's just the way that it's shot, the way that music is used, the way the camera is used, the beautiful performances that just really make this film special. It really is a special film. So yeah, The Quiet Girl, absolutely loved it. Okay, so that was just a quick run through of a whole load of varied movies. Hopefully those are of interest. But yeah, please let me know in the comments if you're familiar with any of these movies, if you like them, if any of these are going to be of interest to you, if you haven't seen them. So yeah, all different types of movies here. Some of these you can get on the boutique labels, others you're going to have to search for. But yeah, I think that's all part of the enjoyment of movies, is just keep being curious about things. Lots of films will come out on Blu-ray and 4K, that's fine, but there's so many other movies that are still to be discovered as well. So yeah, let me know your thoughts on these, and hopefully you'll join me again for some more videos. Thanks very much for joining me on this one. All the best to you. Bye bye.